last week, I started out with a cylinder, but then I shaped it. But I got most of the clay pulled up because there wasn't going to be a whole lot of stretching in that piece. There was some stretching, but what I want to do today is like a sphere. That's the right word, right? A spherical shape. And so, therefore, I'm going to start shaping the piece earlier in the process. I'm still going to start out by just getting the clay up. Not all of it, not till it's thin, because if I pull it all up and it's as thin as it's going to be, and then let's say the bottom is this wide and the top is this wide, but it's got to go out like this, that is not going to work. So,
I'm sorry, I didn't know you had your...
Always start the same way by centering your clay. Okay. So we have a piece of 1.5 pounds. And if I want this to be a sphere, I'm not going to open it really wide in the bottom. Okay, it's not a huge lump of clay. So I'm only going to create a flat floor about that wide. Okay.
I can just hold it.
Skinny little sponge.
I'll get you one.
No, a little flat.
What were you saying about how big you open the bottom?
About that wide.
You're already way past that. You're talking about the inside?
The inside. Yeah. Thank you. Ingles stopped carrying
Oh,
these.
come on.
I almost went into a panic attack in the grocery store. I was like, wait, this is the third Ingles I've gone to, and you don't carry these things anymore? What? What are all the patterns that we teach? What are they all going to do? So I ordered some online. It's cheaper anyway. You know there's a conspiracy to get us to buy everything from Amazon. It's a little scary, but I admit I do it. So I'm just compressing the bottom. I'm using this finger with this wonderful skinny sponge wrapped around it. I'm starting at the wall and just moving my finger towards the center to compress. Some people compress back and forth, back and forth. You can do that, but always end going towards the middle. Because when you get an S crack, it's in the middle of the pot that the pot comes apart. So you want to tell the clay that you want it to stay together in the middle. Okay. So, again, just enough water so that my clay is slippery. Now, even though I'm going for a spherical shape, I pushed in at the top before I start to pull so that this opening here isn't any wider like this. This opening is way wider than the floor of my pot. I don't want that. So I'm going to just bring it in before I even start to pull. You'll be amazed how much that will make it easier for you to pull walls, is to not have your clay starting like this. Okay. So my first pull, I'm just going to pull straight up. And I'm really moving some clay. I probably got almost twice the height of what I had before. Now, because I'm going for a round shape, that's ridiculous because everything you make on the wheel is round. Sphere shape. And like I said earlier, the middle of this is going to stretch a lot. So even though I'm definitely of the school that every pot starts as a cylinder, when you're making something and you really want it to be spherical in shape, you need to start that shape pretty soon. So I just, with something this small, I do one pull to start to move the clay up in a straight cylinder, and with the second pull, I'm going to start to shape it. So my inside finger is really responsible for a lot of this shape. As I pull up, I'm going to push out, and then I'm going to go back in. You just think that your fingers are drawing that shape, okay? But again, just like with any other form, you can't do all the stretching at once, but I want to really get under some clay out here, and then I'm going to start my pull and push. I'm pushing out with the inside finger. Now I'm bringing it back, so I'm going to push in with the outside finger. And push in, really stabilize that rim by pushing it in. So it's not round yet, but there's still a lot of clay there. Okay. Just enough clay to make it water, to make it slippery. Now, I had this smaller, my hand's bigger, then don't worry about it. You still want to do this at the end. If you want your opening of your pot to be small, you want to tell your clay right from the beginning. And it's okay that my hand is going to stretch it out. Don't worry about that. It'll be okay. All right, so I'm going to get under some clay again. I'm going to push out with my inside finger until I get to about the middle, and then I'm going to start to change direction and push back in.
So were you pulling up also?
Yeah.
Like adding height? Like it looks
Yes.
like you're moving clay up from the bottom.
Yes.
Okay.
But again, if I look at the bottom, my floor is about that wide. That includes my fingers. So the floor inside is about that big. And this is a lot bigger. Even though I'm going to stretch it out, I'm going to push it back in first. Because I'm just reminding the clay that I want the top to be narrow. When I use this little sponge, I really try to kind of clean it out because it's full of slip. I just want water on it. I don't want that thick stuff. Stretch it out again. It's okay. But notice down here, from the very bottom, this does not go out. It still is mostly coming up. That's important because it's so easy when you are coming out to go out too much at once, and then all the weight of all this clay is going to push that down and it's going to collapse. And if you haven't had that happen yet, you probably will. And it's okay, we all do that, but the way to avoid that is, this is an angle. It's more like this than even, see right down at the bottom, there's not much of a curve. There's also extra clay here. So that's still where I'm getting my clay. When I'm setting up my pull for this form, I'm not pushing out from the inside hardly at all. I'm stabilizing that finger and getting the clay from the outside because I want to keep the bottom small. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to get in there and set up my pull one more time. Most of the clay is up. This is about the right size for a 1.5-pound pot.
So say over again what you just said.
I don't know if I can do that.
Getting the clay from the outside, so it's
You were-
Okay,
you were-
about getting the clay from the
about
outside?
the opening being that thin.
Yeah, okay. So if I start with the opening this wide, the floor of my pot is this big, and I want it to stay that size because I want a narrow bottom on my pot. When I set up my pull, like if I'm just sitting down and throwing a pot or doing a cylinder or whatever, and I'm not really concerned about keeping the bottom small, both of my fingers, sets of fingers, are pushing in towards each other. But if I want to keep that bottom narrow, which is one of the things that makes pots look amazing. Start looking at pots. If the bottom is wide and it has this gorgeous shoulder at the top, it looks kind of chopped off at the bottom, or it looks heavy because the bottom is wide. Now, you can't have a tiny little foot on everything you make, but if you start looking at forms that really look like they have volume, look like somebody blew air into them, and they're just like, wow. They're not going to have this wide bottom, and it's all about getting rid of that clay at the bottom from the outside in order to keep the inside
So the
narrow.
pressure is coming from the outside?
It's coming from the outside. This hand on the inside is just being stable, and this hand is getting under any clay that's left, which there's not much down here anymore. In fact, let's check it out. Oh, I didn't bring a needle tool. Who's got a needle tool at home? Thank you. You guys are so good to me. Okay, so I'm going to check it just to see. Don't be afraid to check the thickness of your pot. Just like you check the floor, you can check the thickness of the bottom.
Oh, just push the other direction.
Oh, okay. So I totally lost my measurement there. There it is. I need to turn it around. Okay, so it's something like that. That's not hugely thick, but this is a small pot, so it's a little thick. But I like to do my trimming while it's still on the wheel, remember? So I'm not going to take much of that away. And you see, if you follow that curve,